going on, guys? Welcome back to the Rollup TV. Today's episode has 5 awesome guests, starting off with Himanshu from World Foundation, rolling into some of our venture friends, Robbie from Dragonfly, Jonah from Blockchain Cap, another AI ZK engineer with DC Builder from World, and then wrapping out at the end of the stream with another awesome guest in Azuki's Zagabond. So, guys, should be a fun stream today. A lot happened over the weekend. We literally had Trump today with Eric Trump has put out something with regards to Tron going public. We had a massive collapse on some tokens. We had Circle doing well today. So a lot to go over. And we're going to jump right into some of the most recent news and stuff that we saw this weekend that I definitely want to make a point out of, starting with this Polyhedra collapse. So, I mean, look, I put a tweet about this that was like, can anybody explain what happened here? And frankly, kind of all I ended up getting was that there was a DEX pool on Binance Smart Chain that somehow these farmers figured out how to, game this pool. So there was 6 whale wallets that were coordinating large scale dumps after converting this KOJE, some shit coin to ZKJ, which is Polyhedra's coin. It's a couple of addresses offloaded 5 million, 10 million, and this just triggered a bunch of cascades. I think there was like 100 million in longs wiped out. And there was actually liquidity being pulled from the ZKJ DEX pool on PancakeSwap on Binance Chain with this KOJE token before the main sell-off. So if you scroll down, you'll kind of see through some of the actual like what happened and kind of like how it all played out. So as you can see, basically before the crash, there was these kind of wallets that started to move liquidity from the KOJE token to ZKJ, of course, classic. And then they proceeded to then dump these tokens pretty aggressively. So the chart is down 80%. It looks terrible. It's really not a great look for the team, nor just the entire space as a whole. I think it really raises more serious questions about insider coordination, slippage exposure, and DEX market structures, and just kind of like how these things have all played out slowly but surely. So yeah, I mean, guys, this is just another one of those things that kind of, it reminded me of Mantra. Mantra's kind of token nuke. And yeah, just not a great look. My take here is that this was definitely done by the insiders. I also heard from some friends that the team had pretty much all closed source code. So yeah, not really sure what to think of this other than just, that this is always possible. And to be mindful when you're operating and kind of seeing these things. I would stay far away from this project and pretty much just not touch it. So that's the ZKJ stuff. That's the Polyhedra drama. But more interestingly enough, Bybit announced their hybrid DEX. So what this is going to do is it's going to actually allow for Bybit to come on chain. They're coming onto Solana and they're calling it ByReal. Now, first thought is like, why wasn't this done on Mantle? People were asking that in the comments of the tweet and just in general. I think the obvious answer is that Solana is the home to a lot of the retail trading and just a lot of the general trading groups. And so that's why it's done on Solana. But you have Ben here who actually got hacked for $1 billion just a couple months back while I was in Hong Kong. He's announcing ByReal, our first on-chain DEX incubated by Bybit, live at the end of the month. It's not just another DEX. It pitches itself as being a hybrid, combining SEX-grade liquidity with DeFi native transparency. Some of the cool features: unified liquidity with the RFQ system and central limit market maker routing, similar to a Meteora. Low slippage trades, MEV protection. So kind of similar stuff that a lot of the Solana DEXs had been working on. And yeah, I mean, it's really focusing on real traders, real assets, real value, and seems to be kind of aligned with this like broader push towards more like institutional real users. I just think that this is the nail in the coffin for centralized exchanges dominance at large, right? So what we've been seeing in the space for a while is that there's been a trend, if you look at like SEX DEX dominance, so the amount of volume and trades on centralized exchanges versus DEXs, it's DEXs have been gaining since 2020, since 2019. And I think this is just further proof. I think Hyperliquid pushed these kind of initiatives forward. I think the better regulatory environment with our administration pushes forward. And then now I think centralized exchanges are realizing that the future of our industry is going to be on chain, and that's where they need to be operating. So that, to me, that's my take, is that this is extremely, extremely positive development for decentralized exchange dominance going forward, and that we will see this trend just continue to persist. So shout out to the Bybit guys. Definitely exciting. And looking forward to seeing more from them. Another thing that happened on Solana is we had 7 ETF filings over the weekend. We had Fidelity, Van Eck, 21 Shares, Grayscale, Franklin Templeton, Bitwise, Canary, and more filed on June 13th. So it was actually on Friday. All filings, including staking language, a new twist not yet seen in prior ETF waves. This is good. I think this will also happen for the Ethereum ETF. And again, my take here, as I said last week, was that I think that this is going to actually trigger more of A, staking ETFs, but B, a more broad like index, crypto index ETF type of product next. So there's back and forth expected. Again, this was originally reported by Blockworks. James Seyfarth of, I think it's Bloomberg, does not anticipate approval this week, which was this week, but previously it was estimated that 90% chance of a Solana ETF approval in 25. I think we get that. I think it's probably higher than that now, closer to 95. So there's also a possibility that I would say that I think is worth pointing out, that Solana and Ethereum staking ETFs could be approved at the same time. So like basically there are Ethereum ETFs now, but we do not have staking abilities for them. There's a world where this leads to actually being able to have staking ETFs for Ethereum as a result of this. So I mean, I think that's particularly interesting for the Ethereum community and just more broadly for the entire space as a whole. I think investors look at Bitcoin in the way that it's this like crypto, or this very digital gold hard asset, something that you can really get behind and hold, and you don't really care about yield. Whereas I think with the other tokens, they're going to want yield because they're going to realize that like there's this inflation adjusted. Basically, you have to beat inflation on these proof of stake networks in order to actually stay up to pace and not get diluted. And so I think that the staking aspect for some of these proof of stake networks is going to be more important than for some of the proof of stake network or proof of work networks like Bitcoin. And so that I think is like something to note for the overall state of proof of stake, of ETFs, and kind of like where we go from here. We're actually going to pull up a new news announcement that has just came out today, which is Trump and Tron. And this to me deserves a WTF because what's actually happening here is we have live Eric Trump backing Tron. So Tron is going to go public, and they're going to try to do a similar Bitcoin strategy thing where they're going to try to come to an IPO in the States. Eric Trump is advising them to actually help on this, and TRX is going public, which to me is just like I don't really understand how this is going to happen. But if you look at the Tron chart, like it literally has just been up only since 2020. The most like supply controlled chart I've seen in a long time, with like, excuse me, very little dips, and just like it's I think a lot of people in the Western world feel a certain way about Tron. I actually saw some pretty sad takes from some of the OGs like Moon Overlord about how this specific event plus Coinbase teaming up with the U.S. Army and sponsoring the recent U.S. Army promotion is just like a sign that like this administration, plus just with the way that these companies are handling it, it's kind of going against the core ethos of the space. Just seen a lot more negativity towards Trump and the administration after these two things. And also Coinbase got a lot of heat over the weekend for supporting the army, which I thought was is warranted in some sense from the deep perspective of the crypto ethos, but it also requires a certain level of understanding of like market awareness, right? Like I think with this Tron thing, this deserves a lot more flack than
Am I connecting on Zoom or
the
this other app? Which one am I using?
Coinbase supporting the U.S. Army. So I think that this is just, again, I put out a tweet just now
Right.
that kind of explained my thoughts toward things. And I said, Tron going public is a sign of mania.
Perfect.
Circle pumping hard from IPO is a sign of mania. Billion-dollar Bitcoin leveraged vehicles is a sign of mania. Privy being acquired by Stripe is a sign of mania. This tweet is a sign of mania. The end. And it just kind of speaks to the state of things today. And I mean, Monday morning news cycle, what do you get? You get Trump and Tron. It's just like, it doesn't get any better. So, all right, guys, we're going to get our first guest in here shortly. He is one of the co-founders of Sentient. And he is going to actually be talking to us about some of the recent developments from Sentient. But I've got a bunch of questions about some of the stuff about Balaji, some of his tweets about open source AI, and more. So why don't we get him into the back end here, get him up here, and let's get started. Himanshu, great to see you, man. Welcome to the show.
Good to see you too, Andy. Nice to be here.
Yeah, man. Are you calling in from SF today?
No, I'm in Dubai.
Okay, right. You're in Dubai. Got it. Well, appreciate you hopping on late. I know it's a bit late over there, and you guys have been working quite a bit. It's our first time chatting, so would love to just get to know kind of your backstory a bit. How did you find, or how did you come up with the idea to start Sentient, and why is this an important thing for your career?
Right. Yeah, I'm one of the co-founders of Sentient. Roughly, I look at product and tech, and the idea for Sentient just comes from this one set of crazy meetings with Sandeep and Shriram and our other co-founder, Shriram of
Love those guys.
and other co-founder Pramod, which was mainly around this idea that we are re-entering the late 90s era of the internet, except this time it is with AI, and very similar parallels are being drawn, very similar centralizing, dominating forces like Microsoft are coming up. But what the discussion is around what new is happening this time, and how does one make sure that this time it looks different, and what role can we play there? And from that, Sentient came out as this framework which can enable open and decentralized AGI and keep the same build energy flowing, which led to this point of AI.
Yeah, man. I mean, I spoke to one of your investors actually on the podcast. We had him in the city last week, Anand Iyer, and we spoke about this really large vision about why this category of decentralized AI is important. And we kind of mapped out how right now, if you think in the abstract as like the super intelligence of all of the combined LLMs and the resources and, financial, social, human capital going into that, 95% of that is occurring within closed doors in mega corporations in the Valley, right? And we've got this small group of folks who are building for a future that is going to actually kind of, I don't think it's going to rival and combat it necessarily, but it is a bit of an opposing force. And I spoke to Anand about how I think there is going to have to be some sort of critical event, or there at least needs to be something which draws the need for more education of the consequences of let's just say this abstract superintelligence being owned by few. And I think we can draw a lot of parallels to history in this sense. But from my mind, it really feels like you throw on a classic rock song and you're like, look, man, we're gonna go fight the good fight. You just try to like reposition the power in this industry. I'm just curious, like how you're thinking about it more broadly as well, holistically, and kind of if that if that is the right way to like frame it with regards to the core mission of Sentient and just of you and the people in this smaller space.
Yeah, so there's something phenomenal happening, which is extremely exciting. It's not negative at all. It's super positive about how this new technology is gonna take everything forward in terms of how productive we are, starting with productivity, and going beyond productivity, how we interact with each other, how as a society we move forward, and essentially can make our attention span to infinite by giving us our clones who are mind clones, and which is very fundamental economic growth.
I'm already
Because now there's
cloning
infinite
my
time.
voice. Actually, I'm cloning my voice for advertisements on the show.
Oh, you have good voice, man. I would use your clone voice. So yeah. So that's happening, and that's completely crazy development. This is one part of it. The other part of it is what every large or small or big and small company says, that this is the era of creative builders. Software engineering won't be about making sure that your data structures are rightly used. It won't be about those things anymore. It would become about being creative, being this person who has a bunch of ideas which they want to validate outside. Basically, product role will become software engineering. So it will become a creator economy and creator role in software engineering, which will unleash millions of new experiences. The big question is, where would these builders build, and where would all this creativity sit? That's one part of it. The other part of it is, what's the best way to coordinate all of that to give us all the innovation and AI that we deserve for this new world? And that's the big question. So first answer, this is the camp one. This camp always comes up when these technologies come up. This happened, as I said last time, in the late 90s. It's not necessarily evil, right? It's basically there's so much economic opportunity and so much capital starts coming in that one has to make sure that you want to dominate the whole market and to give return on that kind of capital. And that's where this originally Microsoft came. It was a bit late, but it came in the internet race. And this time there are a few players, not too many, just 2-3 big players who are painting the same picture, that the best way for all the builders to build is with us, and we will give it to everybody else. And that's the best way. And our thesis is, just as in the case of internet, this was not the best way.
No,
this will
it's
be
bullshit.
extremely limited.
Yeah.
It's bullshit.
Yeah.
And just as in the case of internet, there were some critical inventions of the browser, of the search engine, the way it operates, which enabled that world, which led to this next evolution. We need to have those critical inventions, the critical aggregating offerings to come out that enable this open system to go forward. That's what Sentient is building, a community built open AGI.
So you supported, in a similar vein, a friend of yours, I presume, Varun Mohan, who recently tweeted that within less than 5 days' notice, Anthropic decided to cut off nearly all of their first-party capacity to Claude 3x models. They have now seen model availability issues, and they had to quickly ramp up capacity on other inference providers for their Windsurf AI tool. They were using Gemini now, and they were quite disappointed by the short notice with regards to this action. Is this a symptom of the problem that you're trying to solve? And does this prove that open source AI is going to win, or just a reminder, that there are monopolies on models already?
100%. This is exactly one of those examples where when you have this kind of thing, the moment a business model goes above a threshold, you want to own it completely. You don't want others to have it. That's not how decentralized companies are designed. That's not how board run companies are designed, right? Like, in the sense, they have to give return on that billions of dollars of capital that you keep on hearing about. $100 billion of capital, right? How do you give return on that? Dominate the whole thing. Everything comes to you. It can be good, but but it's not good. The reason being that then you have to align everything with their roadmap, with their thing, and who knows what whims and fancies are there. For example, Windsurf is a great product, and it's a very good path, but suddenly there is some reason, and Claude stops support. The same can happen even for a cursor, which is a great product, right? But I don't want another third-party app building on my models and giving it to you. Why don't I have it the whole thing for my model? Especially when your revenue starts being comparable to my model revenue itself, it becomes a significant chunk, and that's when these things come up. So this is the economic play, but there's also strategic play about who I want to support, who I want to destroy, and no single company can have that play, right?
Got you.
It has to be open. This is just too big. This is just, yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think one big part of that is the verification aspect, right? Like I think that's been a consistent through line that we've seen. And you have big people talking about it as well. And I think this is one property of blockchain that we really get to have is this verifiability. End users get guarantees. They're first class citizens of a network. And Balaji actually recently wrote that AI verifying is the real bottleneck, right? He said AI prompting scales because prompting is just typing, but AI verifying doesn't scale because verifying AI output involves much more than typing. Do you agree that verification is crypto's ultimate use case in this crypto AI intersection? Or is that just like the current form that is an easily understandable narrative, but that may not be like the long-term, let's say match made in heaven for these two technologies?
Verification is an important part of it. Let me break down this a little bit into two parts. So first thing is when you compare with late 90s for the internet, this time we have more to align open source. This time we have crypto to support us. And the way that helps is that it gives us very complex ecosystem to share our profits, to actually have money flow going, not just good heart, but actual money flow going, which will make businesses sustainable. It's not open source movement of the kind that I want to do it because I'm a revolutionary and I want to have this view. That's a good gesture too. But this is more sustainable because of crypto. So crypto has to be used here for alignment, in the sense that economic alignment, all the incentives, all the accounting. This is very complex flow, unlike previous era of advertisement and recommendation engine where only one party serves you at the end and that party pays Google. Many parties will serve in the middle for that one query response that you get, and they all should get their due rewards. That's one thing crypto can enable. This is the economic part of the story. But a much more important part is there underlying it. If I'm using AI in wild open, then I need more guarantees. I need more safety. I need more alignment. And this is where verification comes in, that I need to know what AI am I using. I need to know where those models are coming from. I need to be able to see those models. And when I say it's I and the other people who can help me understand my AI. So verification is a very important feature because it enables safety and security and alignment of this broad open AI, where we don't know who are building these models, what's the origin of those models. All that comes through this verification layer.
Got you. Okay. Yeah. So in the immediate term, there could be some sort of deceitful deception kind of esque things happening. In fact, I think I've seen stuff already about agents purposely lying, for example, and just seeing like this. As this level of intelligence gets smarter, there is going to be without a doubt some sort of like malicious activity. But not only just for that end of the spectrum, the verifiability is really just important for your everyday use cases. Knowing what you get from the tools that you're using. So that's one problem. What are some of the other bigger challenges in this space right now with AI and crypto, in this crossover? And who are some of the teams that you're most excited about that are solving some of the other challenges? I'd love to just understand a bit more holistically how you're looking at this broader landscape.
Right. So I think the flavor of the season is usability. There's a lot of discussions about what use cases about AI will be crypto native, will be crypto first, what kind of use cases will crypto enable. And there are many applications which one can see there. There are very interesting projects like Kaito, which pointed out the role of very specialized data and how this data game is now open again. That's one very important kind of project which will come up. I feel there's a lot to be done in that space, more real-time data, because in principle, the whole of the internet is open again. So many of these things can be revisited and with much more exciting AI front end. So that's one kind of project which will build cool applications, which will get new kind of data here. Then there is other kind of projects which I think are also very important and very serious, which are talking about complete regulatory independence for all the way to the compute. So decentralizing compute, decentralizing the control of compute, taking it away from large cloud providers and thereby also from large regulators in countries, right? Once you take it away from cloud providers, that's where all these decentralized training protocols, decentralized right now, not so many decentralized inference protocols, but decentralized training protocols are out there. That's a very exciting space too. And then there are a few chains who are incentivizing agents who can control wallets and coming out, like Near, for example, is doing a great job there, come up. And that's one very important sector. I definitely believe that the user experience story of crypto will be resolved by AI and wallets controlled by chains. Account abstraction alone won't do it, and those things alone won't do it. These wallets need to be actually controlled by AI, at least for smaller value of transactions, at least for some part of it, and eventually for everything. So that's another part of exciting thing that I'm looking forward to, when I can feel confident to delegate my wallet to a piece of software which I can trust completely, and that's going to happen. So these are some of the things which I have been quite excited about. But frankly, from the way we see it at Sentient, we see that it's very important to maintain, even for crypto AI or not, it's very important to maintain that great UI of AI. Everybody is excited about AI because it's such a look and feel technology. It's such an experience. It's so close to humans. Remove that click thing from humans, and it's like talking to us in our language. And so at the end of the day, AI projects succeed if you can give this cutting edge breakthrough AI to people. That's one thing we want to do. So underneath, we can have all these different people contribute multiple different kind of AI. But from a user perspective, you should get a singular experience of this great thing. Only then one can compete with disclosed companies, because they are, at the end of the day, giving very good AI to the users. And we have to give the same AI from the open source side. That's from Sentient's perspective, that's the battle we have. And while we do that, we want to make sure that this AI is all aligned, all secure, all sort of loyal to your own needs.
Okay, so let's talk a bit more about the ecosystem of builders and people within the team. What are some of the projects that you're seeing or ideas that you're seeing be experimented within the Sentient ecosystem? You know, who's building what? What are some of the cool ideas that you're excited about? Or even just within the founding team and your set of advisors, what are you guys kind of looking to work on there?
Right. So there are three different categories where we are super excited about, and this is where our thing is also coming out. One, the first and foremost categories of this agents which can handle your financial, basically AI Bloomberg. That's a term which we started seeing recently, and which can handle your financial TradeFi and DeFi, like all unified into a singular interface, and it has appropriate tools all the way to coding to give you all the strategies and everything you need. This is an interesting problem, but because this requires many people to come together, different people who are indexing and collecting different kind of data, different people who have their favorite strategies, they should share the strategies for different kind of requests, and it all can be unified into a singular offering and given to all users. So we are enabling these kind of multi-agent systems with a singular coordination layer, where people not only contribute agents, but they also contribute strategies to use those agents and tools. All of us have such strategies for coordinating between different sources. So this is one kind of offering which I'm quite excited about. The second kind of thing which I'm quite excited about, many projects on Sentient are going towards it, is writing this Solidity code based on prompt. You know, as I said, we don't want to be writing software. We just want to be expressing our intent, and software has to come out. But not just writing that code, but also optimizing it, because everybody knows that anybody can write a smart contract, but very few people can write a good smart contract. And that's the iteration which right now is not covered that requires a very good understanding of the code behavior itself, and we're bringing in many players to enable that kind of code.
Got you.
And third category, which I'm very excited about, is actually it's very interesting. I think rather than thinking about very good agents, and we should start thinking about very shitty agents. The agents which are completely crap in the sense that nobody can make sense of it, but they're very addictive, they're very fun, like shit apping. That's the category I'm thinking of, where people have to put out these experiences which will be very addictive and which are very good, because this is completely new domain. The bar of creating app has gone down. So when I'm posting my videos or anything, I don't want to post videos, I want to post some experiences. So what is the Italian brain rot of apps?
Yeah.
That segment is very exciting, and that's where you see especially people who are very young, right? The kind of things they are creating in AI will roughly fall in that segment. The thing about AI is technology for 0 to 25 years old. That's the user segment I want to focus on, less than 25 years old, starting all the way from 0 years old.
Yep.
And we want to build for that segment. Everybody should want to build for that segment, especially with AI. And that's what we are looking at.
Himanshu, I appreciate your time, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. Love what you guys are doing at Sentient. And yeah, I'm just very intrigued by this category at large. I mean, there's just so much happening. So wish you guys well going into mainnet, and hope to meet you in person in one of the coming conferences, ECC or Token or something coming up later this year, man.
ECC, man. Let's see each other there.
Alrighty, man. See you soon. Thanks for coming.
All right. Bye.
The future of AI. Up next, we got DC Builder, research engineer at World Foundation, a good Twitter follower, or a good Twitter follow. Talks a lot about just all sorts of interesting things on Ethereum, on
you should see a
on crypto. He's been around in the space for a while.
The live air room.
So yeah, very interesting. I mean, that last conversation with Sentient is very much in accordance to what I spoke about that I talked about in person last week in the city here, which will come out in a bit. But really, we were talking a lot about how this kind of like AI future is going to happen, and so I know DC is going to have some takes as well. So excited to chat with him. Let's get him up here. DC, what's up, man? Good to see you in the flesh. Hello.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Happy to be here.
How are you doing today, man?
Doing good. Doing good. How about yourself?
Doing good. Are you coding today? Are you shit posting? You leverage longing? What's your vibe today?
A bit of shit posting, a bit of everything else. Yeah. Not leverage longing. I don't like trading very much.
So you know how there's like the chief, how Bread Guy got like the chief shit poster, KOL, like smart guy for Mega ETH? Is that you for World? Are you that guy?
I would say I'm a jack of all trades, master of none kind of person.
Cool.
I'm both a research, like my role is research engineer, but I do like research, coding, some marketing, some comms, some events, DevRel stuff. It's a bit of everything, really.
Nice. Well, cool. Well, then let's talk about some of your latest research. I think a lot of it is at the intersection of AI and ZK, which I feel like probably is rooted upon some of the verifiability concerns with regards to AI, as well as just broadly provability. So yeah, what have you been most recently intrigued by? Perhaps some teams that are building with on World, or just kind of other research that you've been up to in that category.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, ZKML or zero knowledge machine learning is like one of the things that I originally worked on when I joined World like 3 years ago at this point. We were interested about zero knowledge machine learning in the context of so maybe let me backtrack a little bit to introduce the problem space.
Yeah.
We have this system in World that allows you to prove that you're a unique and real human being. And the way that we do that is by like having iris codes. And iris codes are an embedding or a vector representation of the uniqueness of an iris or iris pair. And you go to an orb, which is able to prove that you're a really unique human by computing these iris codes, and then you like encrypt them, and you're able to check that they're unique. And the problem comes like if you ever change any part of the biometrics pipeline in the orb, you essentially make, or you essentially change these vector embeddings or iris codes, and so you have to like re-sign up the user if you ever change anything. And so a lot of the reasons why I originally looked into like zero-knowledge machine learning come from that. Because you want to allow the user to permissionlessly reinsert themselves into the set of verified users without having to go to the orb more than once. So that was like one of the original ones. There's a lot of like really fancy cryptography, like be that multi-party computation, ZK, and also like trusted execution environments all throughout world. I'm happy to paint that picture, but that would be a longer discussion. But yeah, nowadays the thing that I'm most excited about is client-side proving. So like the doing ZK but on phones, because if you want to have privacy, the ZK proofs need to happen at the level of the user or like where the user is.
Yes.
And our user base is on phones on World App, right? Which is like 28 million users, 13 million plus that are verified by the orb as of yesterday. We hit the 13
And what are they
million.
doing on the World app? Like, are they using other applications on World, or like are they doing like what does one do on the World app?
So World App, for those who don't know, there's two main things you can do, or three main things now. One is the safe smart account. So it's a regular smart account wallet. So you can like transact on ramp, off ramp, ERC20, DEX swap, etc. Then you have World ID, which is the privacy preserving proof of personhood protocol. So I can prove that I'm a unique human to a website or a non-chain protocol or something like that. We're also expanding to credentials. So you're going to be able to do things like prove you're from a specific country or that you own a passport from a specific country, eventually that you're over 18 and other things. And the third thing is mini apps. And so mini apps allow you to interact with other applications in the World App ecosystem. So any third-party developer can build and deploy applications on World App, and they're discoverable through the App Store. So as a fraction of total transactions, I would say like something roughly around 60% of all transactions are mini apps.
Cool.
So people either like interacting with Morpho, which is a lending and borrowing marketplace. So you can like lend and borrow, and we have incentives that are SIB resistant. So if you borrow or lend, you have incentives, like incentivized deals, essentially something like liquidity mining, but instead of it being like mined indefinitely by, I don't know, like arbitrageurs or MEV people, there is a limit to how much yield per person you get on a specific deployment or of an asset. That's one. There's a bunch of others. Right?
Yeah.
Like
what are some of your favorite like mini apps that are cool that our audience should try out?
My favorite one is probably the Morpho one. It's the first time that I experienced like good quality UX for like a DeFi primitive for the average person. It was really smooth, really easy. I really liked it. It's like the only one I really personally used from the mini apps that we have out there. Then another one that is like quite cool is credit. Essentially, you have under collateralized lending where you allow the user to borrow like a fixed amount, like let's say $5, and then they repay it with yield. If they repay, then they can borrow a little bit more, and this perpetually. And like if they ever default, they cannot enter, they cannot borrow again, essentially, right? So it's sort of like a SIB resistant, like under collateralized lending protocol. And they fundraised recently and like done really well. So that one is like really cool. Unfortunately, there's a limit to like how many people they can onboard because they have limited reserves of cash they can lend out. But they're expanding now. So yeah, I'm currently in the wait list, so hoping to get access to that.
So when you're looking at doing your research, right, and you're looking around on Twitter and stuff, who are some of the must follow accounts for this kind of like AI ZK space to kind of stay up to speed? Whether they're associated with World or not, who do we have to follow?
Yeah, so for ZK AI stuff specifically, we acquired a team called Modulus Labs around like December of last year. So they were like some of the main players in this space. Now they're part of the applied research department at Tools for Humanity, which is the labs entity behind World. But outside of World, I would say Ezekiel is building the best sort of like developer experience for like ZKML stuff. Essentially, it's a tool that allows you to compile any ONNX file. ONNX stands for Open Neural Network Exchange Format. So it's sort of like a format that you can export from like PyTorch, TensorFlow, and other things, and just generate a ZK circuit out of them automatically. through a compiler, which is built by Ezekiel. So that one is probably like the best UX or best DevX for ZKML out there. There's a few others, right? Like a lot of the just like ZKVM teams are also building cool stuff that you can also use for these things. But they're not like ZKML specific, right? So all the succincts, risk zeros of the world building ZKVMs, those are really useful to follow as well, to just be in touch with general ZKVM stuff. I would say there's a few others as well. Yeah, there's a few, but probably like Ezekiel is one of my favorites.
Gotcha. Cool. So for people who are like, okay, look, I kind of get it. I don't really understand the need behind proof of personhood. Maybe you could just explain like what the dead internet theory means to you, and like if that is relevant towards what world or these just general proof of personhood category projects are trying to achieve.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things that like one of the missions where like why World got even started in the first place is that so World was co-founded by Sam Altman, Alex Blania, and like 10 other people in like 2019 or so. And so the problem was like if you extrapolate the pace of progress of AI into the future, AI will be able to generate text, videos, images. Like you'll have a multi-model model that will be able to create any kind of content that a human usually was able to only create. And so that internet theory is like on social media, eventually all the content will be produced by these AIs. None of it will be created by humans, and humans will be essentially not be able to prove that any of the content that they're interacting with is from a human. And so essentially the internet would die.
Dude, the Twitter swap bots is already like that. I'm blocking a bot or two on every tweet now.
Yeah, it's very annoying. And the problem is that like you can only solve proof of personhood at scale if everyone joins the same protocol. And so there's a bunch of solutions that compete for attention, and it's hard to solve the problem at large. And it's like so far we've used like meta like heuristics about users, like how much time you spend on a session, do you use these services, do you pay for the service, right? And this is sort of like what we've like done to like predict whether you're a bot or not. But if you're a user that joins the internet like post 2023, a lot of these heuristics don't really work because the AI can also fake the heuristics, like engagement, posts, and other things, interacting with services, especially if you have like operator, like OpenAI operator level agents. And so proof of personhood is useful because it allows you to prove that someone controlling an account is a unique human. And even if they delegate that account to a unique human, they're rate limited by how many actions they can do on that account, for example. That's one way to think about it. But in general, like what we're building is a set of identity tools that people can like build on top of. Like things eventually we'll be able to create proofs about arbitrary pieces of your identity, right? Like I'm over 18, I'm from this specific country, I've interacted with this DEX, this chain, this other chain, my followers on X are greater than this, my followers on Substack, like all of these platforms, essentially like all of your identity will be owned by the user. And it's up to the application developers to sort of figure out how they want to do things. Another thing would be like maybe you could curate your own sort of recommendation algorithms, your own filters, your own things for how you want to like think about like distribution and like how you want to serve content and stuff like that. But yeah, a lot of the reasons why World got started in the first place is because like these agents will come at you quick, and we're seeing that like this year, like VO3, Google, right? You have like O3 Pro, Opus 4, Gemini 2.5 Pro, like all these models are getting ever better. You have like all the agent ones, image generation ones, audio generation ones, you know, like the 11 Labs of the world, GPT Image 1, right? Like with all the Ghibli pictures and stuff. Yeah. So if you extrapolate 2 more years down the line, it's going to be even more important. And so we hope that by then there's going to be like a lot more people, like really sophisticated people building alongside us, because it's been hard to build a lot of these things in a credibly neutral way. Even if we build the protocol in a credibly neutral way, it's not that credibly neutral if other people don't participate in the same protocol and like try and build and help us decentralize the thing and solve different trade-offs and expand the sort of possibilities you can do. But thankfully, like a lot of the ZK technologies are coming into fruition at the very same time that you need them for building identity things. And so yeah, it's been really very incredible to see.
Man, definitely. I mean, we saw, real-time proving be brought up again by Justin Drake recently, and it just feels like we're getting closer and closer there. More on the AI side of things. From your lens at World, what are some of the top AI crypto teams right now, and what problems are they solving? Right, like when you're looking at like from this lens of identity, you're looking at it from a different lens as far as a core problem. And I'm just curious, when you look into the current landscape, like what teams stand out for, and what problem are they trying to solve, particularly that makes it compelling?
Yeah, so maybe I can mention some of the ones that I invested in as well.
Yeah, no problem.
One of the ones that I'm very excited about is like Prime Intellect. Prime Intellect is building sort of decentralized training for models. And like the reason why crypto is mostly as a coordination mechanism, right? So AI is an intelligence mechanism, allows you to scale intelligence, operations, agents, things like that. Crypto is useful at coordination. So a lot of the bottlenecks for humanity are either coordination based or intelligence based or maybe like energy based or resource based. So if you solve part of that bottleneck, you can scale and achieve and unlock like a new sort of branch of the technology tree of sorts, if you will. And so Prime Intellect is trying to scale intelligence in a decentralized sense, and for that you need coordination because centralized systems are a lot better at coordination of resources and capital in general. And so I'm really excited about Prime. They've been doing really well in SF. They've been managed to hire a lot of like really prominent people, like Will from like there's so many nice people at Prime. Other use cases are sort of these like AI agent fund manager kind of stuff, like yield farming or like capital allocator agents. One of the ones that I invested in is Giza. They have this product called Arma. They're deployed on base and they have, I think, like 30 million plus TVL. And they're able to allocate capital, like the agent allocates capital on behalf of the users that delegate to this pool. That one is like another use case. Personally, like the biggest use case for AI is in crypto is just development, right? Like it accelerates the pace of progress of coding. So it's like a utility, mostly for me, like whether it's like ChatGPT or Cursor or Windsurf, all of these agentic sort of like GitHub agents, right? Copilot, whatever. Those are really useful as well. A lot of crypto Twitter is filled with like people posting their Claude code bills. It's quite fun to see like
You have
a
a
lot of
different Twitter than I do, I'll tell you that much.
yeah. I mean, like I don't know, like there's a few people doing that. So that's been really exciting to see.
Yeah.
Other use cases in AI crypto stuff. Some of them are around like personal agents, right? So you have a lot of data that you want to give access to the agents to, but it's really hard to mediate. So a lot of the things that are useful is, for example, if you have personal data that you can consume in a verifiable way, or at least have the agent in like a verifiable environment and interact with your data in a private way, that's where sort of like TEs and agents come into play. Another company I invested in is Pluto, and they do like TE verifiable sort of web proofs. And you have this agent interact in like a Chromium instance. It can browse and interact with websites for you, and you get these TE proofs about how it interacts with a website and uses your data to interact with that website. So one thing you might think of is, let's say that you're DoorDash and you want to give incentives to users that are power users of other delivery apps. So like you can prove to DoorDash that you've done more than 100 orders on Uber Eats or some other platform, and then you can get a discount. But if you're lazy to do it, you can just delegate that to the agent. The agent will figure out what services you use, and it will sort of create a proof to that other agent or to that website API that, hey, I'm a trustworthy or power user or whatever person. And then you can consume this discount. That's like another one. There's like honestly like thousands and thousands of things.
Yeah.
But we're only at the beginning of exploring the potential of like cryptography, identity, agents, and how all those play together.
So one last thing for you then. In a post world era, right? In a world where, no pun intended, where identity on chain is more or less solve from a Sybil resistance perspective, right? What do you think is the future of platforms like Layer 3, Galaxy, Kaido, Cookies, what is it now? Will Chain or Quack Chain or something like that? Like, what do you think is the future of these like these mind share and these kind of campaign mechanisms to drive value to pre-product crypto companies?
I think a lot of that will go from SaaS and into just like regular clients for that users own. It will just be embedded in regular apps. Like if I'm a user and I can selectively disclose any part of my identity to the end app, and that's how they want to do like user targeting in a privacy preserving self-sovereign way where I only disclose what I want to the applications, because I still want to have good ads. I still want to, like, if I'm looking for something, I want someone to tell me that it exists. I just don't want them to listen to my conversations I'm having because I have the Instagram app open or something like that.
Yeah.
So I believe a lot of these like data aggregators, crawlers that like try and like read cookies and all of your browser sessions and try and like scrape stuff about you to then advertise to you and sell that data to like some third-party providers. A lot of that is going to go away, and it's going to be much more efficient, and there's going to be less churn because Google wastes like hundreds of millions, billions of dollars on just trying to skew, like just like go through all the data that it has about you to try and figure out whether you're a bot or not, or whether you're a worthy customer of this ad, or, you know, like a lot of this stuff is like really hard to do at scale. It's something I've seen only at World. When you're building at scale, there's a lot of these like churn and problems and bottlenecks that a lot of big companies have that are not really visible to the end user. So to me, it's like a lot of these things are going to be abstracted away. They're going to be simplified. The data is going to be owned by the user. And through cryptography, we can mediate our identity. The only problem is that we need to solve UX so that the user doesn't have to think about this. But hopefully with like good AI, good UX, good product designers entering crypto now finally. And like there's just a lot of money also to be made, like good incentives, right? If you have good incentives, the way I think about like how do you make apps more private is just build a better user experience. To me, the private apps have inherently a better user experience than the non-private apps. That's why all the apps in the future will have privacy, not because people care about privacy in the first place, because we've seen they really don't. Like we all use all the FANG company apps, and all of them are like spyware for the most part. And so yeah, just build a better app that has privacy built in, and that's sort of where we're all going to see like adoption and move to like cypherpunk from first principles as a default.
Yeah. I mean, I think that those like Sybil, the ability for those bots and different types of entities to Sybil is particularly interesting from like the looking for airdrops and they're looking for all these things, and then you extrapolate that all the way outside to actual privacy, right? And like building that out, and that's a whole different conversation, right? And has a lot more of real world impact on everyday people. And I remember getting into the space, and I used to do like online marketing work and do a lot of like Facebook ads and such. And I was pretty shocked as to how much data is being just passed around consistently. And I actually had more of a problem with it before I did it. And then I was like, oh, this makes sense. Like this is just a way to run online businesses, right? It's a way to facilitate commerce online. But the issue is you introduce AI now, and there's a lot more potential consequences from this data sharing. So yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. DC, thanks for joining, man. Any closing thoughts from you?
Not really, honestly. It was a pleasure chatting, and I hope you have a great time for the rest of the session. Take care, man.
Cheers, man. Appreciate you.
See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
See you in Cannes.
See you there.
Yeah. That is a very interesting set of thoughts if you run through. So look, I think a lot of people are underestimating what the need is for blockchains as a way to facilitate digital identity and as a way to actually think about how this AI technology is going to bring new like agents or entities to the world that don't have a passport. They don't have a they don't have any sort of representation outside of Well, they're an agent that was spun up by somebody, and that's kind of where we're at, right? So I don't know, like I think between WorldCoin and then I think Humanity's coming out with mainnet pretty soon as well. So excited for that too. And yeah, well, I mean, we'll see kind of how that all plays out and what that's going to look like in the future. I think we're still just waiting on our friend Jonah to come in. But he will be here shortly, and excited to get that up. Let's have a quick look at the timeline. We'll do a little Andy reacts to the timeline. Somebody just told me to put the modular in the Hyperliquid, bro. I'm gonna respond and say, bro, it's generating revenue, man. I love meeting people right now about revenue. I got altcoin Sherpa tweeted fart coin. That's it. That's the tweet. That thing's probably going up. All right, here we go. We've got people hating on VC coins. We got Benji has just confirmed his trip to Cannes. Shout out to Benji. We had him on last week. He got an Airbnb. I knew it. I tweeted earlier. I was like, look, ECC be like, let's see, where's the tweet? 1 month ago, no, I'm not going to Cannes. 1 week ago, okay, I might go last minute. Next week, yeah, I just booked a flight last minute. Let's go. It's just classic. It's just everyone was hating on Cannes. Let's see what else is going on the timeline here. Oh my God, here we go. Eric Trump. Wow. Denies. He says, I'm the biggest fan of Tron and love Justin's son, Tron. He is a great friend and icon in the crypto space, but I do not have public involvement in this. Wow. So Eric Trump has publicly denied his involvement in Tron. That's pretty funny. Here we go. We got a masterclass in crypto derivatives from Blockworks. Yano just put out a nice pod. We have a pod with Yano dropping as well in a couple of days leading up to permissionless. Should be exciting. Let's see here. Pump token is trading at 6 billion FDV pre-market on Avo. Only 80K of volume. Doesn't really matter then. Let's see. What else is going on? People are bull posting hype and flexing their buys at $10 Lambo land. I think Flood is probably pretty euphoric today. What else is going on? Here we go. Laura Shin goes, back in 2017. So I put out a tweet saying we're in the mania phase. Laura Shin goes, back in 2017, they used to say a wall of institutional money is coming and people would be excited. Now it's happening and people are realizing they should be scared. I'm going to tell her back. I remember when we used to meme instos and say, we're going to dump on them. That was the real meme. Now it's like, oh crap. What's happening to our ethos as a space? Why is everyone leveraging up? Leveraging up to buy coins. Interesting. All right. That was the latest on the timeline. I think Jonah's coming in here in a sec. We'll get him in the back end to get him sorted. And should be well taken care of. We got a bunch of good questions for him. I met Jonah, I think I met Jonah in Singapore last year or Bangkok. I think it was Singapore. I think it was just briefly though at like an alt layer event or something. But yeah, we have some good topics, good questions. So let's get them up here and let's jump into it. How you doing, man? Good to have you.
Hey, yeah, thank you for having me, Andy.
Where are you calling in from? It looks cloudy.
Yeah, calling in from New York. It's it's pretty miserable outside today. But
Yeah, same. I haven't gone outside today. It's
yeah, exactly.
Like, come on, man. Like, come on. It's middle of June. What are we doing here? But it's
I
good
know,
to
but I
have you.
head to Berlin for Zoo Berlin tonight, so it should be very nice there.
Man, Berlin looks like a vibe right now. Like people are having fun. It just looks nice. I'm a little jealous. Well, man, Thanks for joining. Been a fan of what you guys do at Blockchain Capital. Like I said, I think I met you last year, but it was definitely in passing. But I've been seeing some of your content, and we've been doing quite a bit of investing the last 2 years and trying to come up with our own theses and such. And so, yeah, let's just jump right into it. We're gonna go over
for sure. Let's get in.
some of your tweets. So, first tweet is the bottlenecks in blockchain has never been execution; it's been consensus. Hot take. The whole let's make the EVM faster narrative leverage speed to attract marginal buyers, but solve the wrong problem. The EVM, SVM, and most VMs run far faster than chains can reach finality. You can make a car body super aerodynamic and spend millions reducing air resistance, but if the engine is weak, the car won't go fast. Basically, you're arguing that Ethereum's consensus mechanism is old and that we need to figure out a way to get around that. And I'd just like to add real quick that I think some of the work that the ZKVM teams are doing to basically remove the need from on-chain execution and just execute off-chain and then verify on-chain is like a step in the right direction as well. But yeah, curious, what did you mean by the bottleneck in blockchain is not execution?
Yeah, this is a great question. Maybe you can take a step back and like motivate why this is an even important question to ask.
Yeah.
So if you try to rank order, like what are the problems with Ethereum, you'd probably say it is too slow, it is too expensive, really bad. Like interop is not good, it's convoluted, it's complicated. And if you're trying to say, well, what is the solution to that problem? You'd probably come to, well, if you lower the latency of the chain, if you made it faster, you would solve all three. You would solve trivially, you'll solve the speed problem. If Ethereum was 2 times faster, let's say, that means they'll double the amount of blocks, double the block space, right? Cheaper fees, right? Supply and demand. So faster Ethereum, cheaper fees, right? Better UX. And also, a lot of the problems with interop today is competing standards. And that's a function of people trying to route around the base layer, right?
Yeah.
Like you have these solvers debiting and crediting across L2s without ever flowing through the base chain because it's too expensive. The second it's faster and cheaper, right, it becomes a dominant strategy to use the hub. So if you want to rebuild the network effects of Ethereum or any chain for that matter, being fast is critical. But it's pretty obvious with modern research that the bottleneck is not execution. And a good proof of that is you could take the Reth client and run it 10 times faster than Ethereum is being run today. The hard problem in a blockchain is how do you make sure all the nodes in the network agree that this is a state of the blockchain? So you could make Reth 30,000 times more performant, right? But the Ethereum won't reach consensus that fast, right? It still takes 12 seconds.
Yeah.
So you need to solve that core problem. I think Solana, obviously, with Alpenglow is rethinking the problem, shipping something. I think Ethereum needs to go back to the drawing board and ship something similar. Not necessarily Alpenglow, maybe with different trade-offs, but kind of rethink the problem from ground up.
Yeah. So recently, crypto Twitter rediscovered Clobs, which has been a fun thing to be a part of. But I think Ansem put out a tweet that was basically saying that ideally, like rollups should be the ideal infrastructure for these kind of like specialized high throughput applications. Why? Well, when you're thinking about a very fast decentralized L1, you have this consensus problem, right? You have this data propagation consensus problem where with a single sequencer or a co-located set of sequencers for rollups, you're really just avoiding, you're trading off some of your censorship resistance, but you're avoiding that like consensus problem that you're explaining. So, like, I'm curious from your perspective, is that how to think about it, or like, yeah?
So I think it's an interesting point, but rollups are actually similarly bottlenecked by this issue, right?
Okay.
So a rollup, the true finality of a rollup, and your transaction landed and you have complete guarantees, is only when Ethereum settles, right? Like
Right.
Arbitrum can roll back. Anything can roll back. You actually, the final state check, the check that this was a proper state transition, that your transaction settled, is when Ethereum actually, reaches consensus on a block. So any roll up that is giving you a confirmation that your thing happened fast it's actually an illusion. They are giving you some sort of economic guarantee, or they're staking the reputation on the fact that this is not going to roll back. But true finality hasn't been reached. So you can imagine if I'm a large financial actor moving, I don't know, on the order of $100 million, right? The bottleneck is still there. I still need to wait to confirm that, hey, my roll up transaction settled. And this is, by the way, with an optimistic rollup, even worse because it takes 7 days for the finality game to be played. Whereas for a ZK rollup, right, you get the confirmation immediately. So you're right that you can give the illusion of quick finality, so to speak. But in actuality, what a large financial actor will demand, that kind of finality is still bottlenecked by Ethereum's.
Yeah, very, very interesting. I had this thought that, and I think a lot of people shared this thought with regards to like this more serious capital per se that you referred to. We're seeing institutions come on chain more than ever, but I think a lot of people thought it would only come to Ethereum. And like that has just been like completely blown out of the water, right? Like with BlackRock's Biddle, and just all the stuff happening on Solana, on Converge, Avalanche. Like, do you think institutions and these capital allocators, if you're speaking to them, like, do you think they care about these nitty gritty things in blockchain, or is there a separate way that they might be thinking about where to put large amounts of capital on chain today?
Yeah, for sure. This is, by the way, a great question. We've been, by the way, as a fund, playing around the RWA space for a long time. Like we're early Circle investors, early Tether investors, Anchorage. I mean, we are early investors in Securitize, who's doing a lot of tokenization, right? And putting the stuff on Solana and Ethereum. So this has been a thesis we've been following for a while. I was always frankly surprised by the Ethereum kind of match the argument that somehow we have a monopoly on like where institutions are going to go deploy capital. The claim was, well, we're the most secure, we're the most decentralized, whatever, we have L2, whatever it may be. And I think, frankly, what we've seen over the past years, that's not the case, right? Solana has, right, is similarly dominant, right? Apollo just made a deal with Drift. They now have their products on Drift, right? You see BlackRock feeling comfortable putting Biddle on Solana. So you're seeing other ecosystems offering a credible alternative to Ethereum. So I think the question Ethereum now needs to answer is, well, what is our unique value proposition to institutions? I think Etherealized, by the way, is great. I'm really happy they exist because I think that they're now a more credibly neutral, I guess that's probably an overloaded word, but an actor in the ecosystem now that is actually actively trying to think about what is Ethereum's unique value proposition when it comes to institutions. I know that Matter Labs is also deeply thinking about this question as well, right? They're trying to create a lot of products for institutions that are more privacy oriented because that's something they demand. But you're right, there's a big open question of we no longer exist in some sort of unipolar world where Ethereum has dominant market share in RWAs. There's real competitors now.
Yeah, so the most pressing question that I've been asking pretty much every VC and kind of liquid fund over the last 2 weeks has been their thoughts around pump. And I'd like to just ask you kind of personally, separate from the fund, like I think a lot of people have like become growingly irritated with pump.fund, calling them extractive. However, then you look at Hyperliquid and everyone is very excited because they're making money. But like at the end of the day, they're effectively funding two sides to a barbell that is on-chain speculation. So I think it has a really bad rep. But on the contrary, some funds and investors are quite bullish at $4 billion FTV. Not financial advice, but what's your take on pump at $4 billion? Is it a buy or a sell? What's your thoughts?
Yeah. So maybe take a step back to my thesis when it comes to this category, where when it comes to DeFi, you have to own the user relationship if you want to make money. And the best example is the swap market, frankly, for this, which is that, let's say, I guess I'm using an easy thing. Let's say you're buying $100 of Solana, right? You might be willing to pay up to $2 in fees, right? Up to $2. And everybody now in that supply chain for giving you that order is competing over that share of the pie, right? So you have the front end wants to take a slice of that. You have an aggregator, the exchange, you have the blockchain itself. Everyone's competing over that sly. And what we've consistently seen is that those who are on the front end have the most ball control, right? So if you're Uniswap, for example, right? You ask the question, why am I sending transactions to Arbitrum? Like, what is the point of doing that? Like, I might as well create my own L2 and own that slice of the pie for myself, basically just trying to eat more and more slices of the pie. I think the thing that Pump has done that's particularly good is that they own a lot of coverage in the market, right? Like they are a primary venue by which users come in and make a swap. And by owning the front end, they have a lot of ball control. So you saw them exercise that when they said, hey, why are we sending flow to Radium? Right?
Yeah.
Like, why are we using Radium's AMM and giving them fees? Like, and then they built their own, right? They built their own. And next thing you know, right, Radium saw a big drop off of volume, and now Pump is internalizing that. Another question they asked themselves was, why are we pushing users to go trade on other platforms? Let's have, once a token leaves the
Like graduates.
the bonding curve, graduates, right? Like
Yeah.
it should still be traded on their platform. So
Yeah.
I think Pump on that front has been very smart. They want to own more of the user relationship, and given the fact that they own the user relationship, command more of the room. But you're actually seeing, I think, very viable competition. So what I mean by that is, take a look at Phantom, right? Phantom now has swaps, right, internal to their application, right? You could do a meme coin swap on Phantom, and that's actually siphoning off volume from Pump. Another good example is you see Jupiter just bought Moonshot, right? That is a Pump competitor. So you're seeing in the Solana ecosystem, at least, a lot of these front-end providers competing for coverage.
Yeah.
I think the big open question for Pump is, does this meme coin craze last forever? Or does it not? And are they well positioned in both cases? So you can imagine that Jupiter just launched an RFQ product in order to own more of the major flows. Will Pump ever launch a product like that? I don't know. Or you might say, well, they should go gun-ho meme coins. That will be a market that exists forever, and then they have good coverage there. So the point is, being a front end is an amazing place to sit. There's real competition at the front end layer, and there's also a question of where net new flows will go in. And I think it's an open question whether Pump is well situated for that.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Jupiter, Pump, Radium, even like Camino, and some of these likes, all kind of trying to build what you could call a super app, and kind of competing within each other to basically own the Solana flow. But then you've got Phantom, which you could argue has the biggest advantage of them all, because that's where everybody starts. And so that's kind of like what you're getting to, and it's kind of an evolution of like Fat Protocol thesis. I think like the narrative's kind of like on apps right now, but I think it's
exactly,
like
yeah. There's like the fat app thesis, yeah.
But it's quickly like no, fat wallet. Like you just gotta you gotta own users somehow, and you gotta go out and get them and bring them in. And I feel like that question is probably becoming more and more relevant and frequent in all of your DD and just broad conversations with founders and other investors.
Precisely, yeah. And by the way, when it comes to the wallet in particular, it's a very interesting front end, because if I use Uniswap one day and then go to Jupiter the next day, the friction isn't so high. But it's really frustrating to turn off of a wallet, right? It's a high friction activity. So a wallet has this very unique relationship with the user, where once you start using it, unless it's a really bad experience, you stick with it. As a result, they have a lot of monetization angles as such, right? Because they see less user churn. But I would not categorize a wallet as being some separate category unto itself. It really truly is just an app with a interesting distribution strategy and an interesting strategy to make sure that users are loyal to it.
So if you look at the landscape now, what are some of the companies that you think are dominating the distribution front, and like what can we learn from that in future investing?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I think we actually covered a lot of it so far.
Okay, cool.
I mean, we talked about Phantom. They have an amazing strategy. We talked about Jupiter, about how they did this brilliant strategy of getting their RFQ to basically earn more of the fees that come from the major trading. And by the way, they have their own front ends. As a result, they're able to monetize there. We spoke about, I guess, Uniswap briefly, who's now monetizing both the L2 layer, and they're also, by the way, building a wallet now. So you see a lot of the blue chip players kind of running this expansion strategy. I mean, you spoke about Camino. There's a lot of these guys that are all kind of thinking similarly, trying to own more and more surface area.
Yeah. I mean, when I'm thinking about who are going to be using these applications, it's starting to become more and more clear that obviously the kind of L1 economics are starting to crumble a bit as far as just like broad premiums. But I think even more so, like an important kind of trend has been some of these teams are now actively going and being like, look, this is exactly like who we're going to target and like how we're actually going to get them over the line. Like we invested most recently in Santiago's inversion capital thing, right? And it's like very clear expensive, but it's very clear, like exactly like what the kind of goal in, like who the target is, how it's going to happen. Now again, it's venture, right? So who knows if it works? But like these developments of clear targeting of user profiles and of like method to getting to
For
be
sure.
one of the larger chains or larger apps, I think is like more and more compelling. And I honestly think that Hyperliquid has forced the hand of a lot of people, a lot of builders as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, by the way, Hyperliquid's a really interesting example of true vertical integration, right? They own the dominant front end in their ecosystem. They own the dominant DeFi application, and they own the underlying block space. When we talk about the pie, about how you're trying to vie for the most amount of the pie when it comes to user fees, they own the whole pie. So that's a really interesting example of true vertical integration, which also, by the way, translates to a nicer user experience, right? They're able to
Yeah.
design their block space in a way that is optimal for the kind of the front end they're providing. Obviously, it has the bad effect that it's less interoperable with the rest of crypto. So there's trade-offs. But yeah, Hyperliquid's definitely a fascinating example here.
Yeah. Just one last thing for you, Jonah. When you're looking right now at in like investable categories or kind of sectors that are, maybe like one or two orders of thought down the line from what is currently present in the market today or like exciting today, like what are some of either, and I tend to think a lot of this might be driven by the proliferation of AI and just this kind of like general trend and change. Like what are some of the second and third order like thoughts that you're having with regards to okay, here's what's happening in the market today. As a result of that, X, Y, and Z may occur. So this is going to be a very investable idea or category.
Yeah. So we as a fund have very nice relationships with a lot of the FinTech players. And we were always told by them is that for them running the crypto side of their businesses is far cheaper, by like an order of magnitude. So I think as we see more clear regulation, we see the Circle IPO, which has, I think, proven to a lot of institutions that crypto is here to stay. And we're seeing tons of tokenization happening. I imagine a lot of businesses and folks are going to run their institutional side of their businesses on a blockchain, right? So that's like the RWA thesis. So I think an open question is, what does distribution look like there? Do these RWAs sit on a blockchain but are distributed via the same channels like a Charles Schwab or Robinhood? Are the crypto players beneficiaries? So I think the second order effects of tokenization being kind of more comfortable for these larger actors. I think who owns the user relationship in that world? How do these things get distributed? It's going to be a very interesting question. Another interesting category we're looking at is, and I'm sure you've heard this 1,000 times, but there's, I don't know how many people are there in the world, 8 billion. I have to imagine there's going to be way more like AIs running around, right? So stable coins are probably going to be the dominant rails in which they use, right? I don't think an AI model wants to have T+2 or T+1 settlement, right? They want to have instant settlement, programmable money, right? Their programs are talking about programmable money. So I think it'll be very interesting. By the way, if anyone out there is building it, DM me. I would love to hear. But teams kind of thinking about how you integrate AI models running around the internet now paying for things, and this being a unbelievably untapped like market, and like the intersection of that with stablecoins, I think will be quite interesting. I mean, X402 is a new standard. I'm curious if that gets adoption. I'm also curious at what layer of the stack does that value get captured? I mean, it's the issuer business model when it comes to stablecoins is pretty clear, but the kind of the business models that sit on top of that, I think there's some open questions. So anyone has unique thoughts there, I would love to hear about it. I'm sure you've probably gotten a bunch of people on your show talking about this.
Yeah, everyone wants to talk about stablecoins. That's the stablecoins AI and just kind of where there's going to be more and more places to kind of basically create their own pie, as you're saying, because the issuers are taking a lot of it. And then broadly, obviously, RWAs. So, Jonah, I appreciate you joining, man. I appreciate your time. We'll have to link up in the city. I don't know if you want to
for
ECC, but I'll be around for a bit.
Awesome. Yeah, this is really lovely. I definitely appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Cheers, man. See you soon, brother. Peace. Man, I always enjoy speaking with just people that are thinking about venture and just looking at the larger picture from the immediate. I mean, look, like everyone wants to hit the next 10x and liquid and you know, buy the next fart coin and be a part of Hyperliquid and such. But really where I think a lot of the value is coming from is going to be in these longer term trends and just seeing those play out more broadly. So up next, we got Robbie, a analyst, researcher. I was following his work back before he was at Dragonfly. I think he was working with Delphi and doing some of the research there, kind of just piling on to the conversation that we just had. And stuff about stablecoins and the wallets. And I think Robbie put out a really good post about the fat wallet thesis that I'd like to get his update on. So we're going to bring him up and we'll get Robbie up on stage. What's up, man? Welcome to the show. Good to see you, man. Are you in the city? Nice. Yeah. I'm just across the bridge. I've been here for like 2-3 months. So it's been a bit of a journey,
nice.
you know, but it's been nice.
Yes, sir.
Man,
That's
I caught
great.
one of your posts, I don't know, it was probably a couple months ago now, about the fat wallet thesis. And I remember reading it and being like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. I think it's a bit early to actually kind of like where we are in the space now. But now that we've seen like things like Privy get acquired by Stripe, the amount of growth that Phantom has had, and just broadly like teams shifting towards this ownership of user relationships, I think that you were spot on. So you wrote that maybe a couple months back. I'm curious how much that has changed or even just like shifted since
Sure.
then, and maybe just why you believe so strongly in this from like a early stage investment thesis.
Sure. Yeah. So first, I got to caveat that everything I say expresses kind of my personal view and not that of Dragonfly. So, and in addition to that, nothing I say is investment advice, legal advice, etc. So, got to keep the compliance
Hell yeah,
team
brother.
happy. But yeah, no. So I think at a high level, the sort of the fat wallet thesis, if you were to kind of distill it down, it was that the two most sort of valuable resources in crypto are, one, exclusive order flow, and then two, distribution. And I think order flow is kind of downstream of distribution, so they kind of go hand in hand. And sort of the thesis, like what I laid out, is I think actually wallets sort of own both. And historically, I think you've always had kind of the fat protocol thesis, and I think more recently evolved into sort of the fat app thesis. This idea that apps are going to disproportionately capture value. And I think ultimately it's just as simple as whoever owns the end user. And I think people under-indexed on sort of wallets kind of within that. And I think if you kind of think about what is the canonical gateway into crypto, right? It is wallets. And I think for some people it's different. And I think you are
Moonshot,
seeing
man.
it's moonshot, right? And I think like it's not just owning, I think, order flow and sort of exclusive order flow, but I think it's also owning sort of fee insensitive order flow. And I think that's a very important nuance. And if you look at something like, Moonshot, I think Axiom is probably the best example today, where it's not just owning the end user, it's owning end users who are pretty fee insensitive, and they're willing to pay 100 up to 200 basis points on swaps, right? And I think that's an incredibly valued position to be in the stack. And if you look at sort of the majority of where value has accrued, it is sort of those front end fees that end up becoming sort of the majority of the value captured in the crypto stack. So that was sort of like the genesis of the fat wallet thesis. And then to kind of answer your question on, how I think it's evolved, I think it's actually more true today than it ever has been. I just think the way sort of you define a wallet has kind of changed.
Yeah.
So I think historically the way I would have defined it is just, you cited kind of Phantom and, MetaMask and these guys. And I think now what you're seeing is sort of wallets are like sort of the line between wallets and applications actually blurring. So if you look at something like, Axiom, I think you could call it a wallet. Sort of they own kind of they have custody and they handle the wallet stuff. But they're also facilitating within their front end, swaps. I think they also do yield on sort of vital assets and a bunch of different things. And I think that's fundamentally the idea, right? If you're owning the end user as that front end, which they're interfacing through, you kind of have the most exclusive order flow within the entire MEV supply chain. So if you increase your take rate, users may not switch given they're fee insensitive, but I think everyone downstream of that in the MEV supply chain, if they increase their take rate, users are going to leave. And I think that includes DEXs, right? So if you think like, if Radium all of a sudden said, we're going to charge 100 basis points on swaps, but then all of that order flow is now just going to get routed elsewhere. Maybe it's going to Orca, or maybe it's just an RFQ that routes that flow off chain as well. So that was kind of the thesis. And I guess that's how it's evolved in my eyes.
Yeah. So I actually was just speaking to to Jonah from Blockchain Cap prior to this, and we were speaking about how there's kind of a bit of a vendor lock-in, if you will, with wallets where you set up a seed phrase and they're much more sticky than switching from a Uniswap to a Radium, or from a Sushi to Uni to a aggregator. Do you think that is a big part of this thesis, is that it's less so about where they enter, but more so about if you can own the beginning of their experience, where they don't want to have to go and like make different wallets and keep track of all these things. If they just have that one, that is a large reason as to why this is going to work out outside of the economic kind of take rate ideas that you've brought up, just from a pure user perspective. Think about how many wallets you have, or like the main ones that you use. For me, it's you've used the same ones for a long period of time. So I think, is it less so about the economics and more so just about like user behavior, or I guess it's a combination of both?
Yeah, so the way I usually frame this is, I think technically switching costs are very low. Again, it's your seed phrase, right? You can export your seed phrase however you want. I think it's psychologically switching costs are very high. And I think you implicitly put a lot of trust in your wallet, right? Because ultimately they're the ones custodying kind of your assets, right? Or at least that's the way you perceive it as the end user. And I think there's also like a sort of path dependent nature. I think users get very used to an interface, and then ultimately they don't really want to switch. And then coming back to my original point, fundamentally, most of these users, they're trading, meme coins, and I think it's a very binary outcome that they're looking for. It's either this thing's going to zero, or it's going to be 100x, right? And when that's kind of what you're expecting, I don't think paying 100, 200 basis points really matters to you when you're kind of seeking that binary outcome.
Yeah. All right, shifting gears a bit to some of the stablecoin stuff that I think you've been quite interested in, and I think this is one thing that people are kind of getting the horse in front of the carriage a bit, per se. And Wei Dai put out a tweet about a month ago saying that it's wild that merchants are still paying 2-3% from each sale to banks and credit card companies. How come crypto has not yet won in consumer to business payments? The necessary components are token incentives, payment app, TradFi grade account statements, on-ramp from banks, and then for actual businesses, POS, stablecoin accounts with yield, off-ramps, etc. But I do just kind of feel like the industry has a bit of like this idea that we can just plug in stablecoins, that with the current infrastructure, it's going to solve the kind of last mile problem and this kind of like fee problem, when in reality we're still kind of missing a lot of I guess what you would expect in traditional payments. Like, what is your thoughts with regards to kind of stablecoins actually coming in and saving us that 2-3%, killing credit cards? Like what is stopping stablecoins right now from actually winning consumer payments?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think there's a lot of nuance with respect to how payments actually work. And I think logically where most people go is they look at, credit card payments, they say merchants are paying 2 to 3%. They look at stablecoin payments, they say, well, it costs maybe, 1 cent to do a Solana transaction. And the conclusion they quickly draw is sort of stablecoins are going to eat the world, and
yeah, exactly.
And I think unfortunately it's incredibly nuanced. And if you actually unpack like what is that 2 to 3%, there's a lot of different kind of costs baked into that. And I think even before that, what you have to do is first distinguish between credit card payments and debit card payments, because they have fundamentally different kind of cost structure. So if you look at debit card payments, they're actually not that expensive. So when when you tap your Visa card, you're paying the card networks, you're paying sort of the issuer banks, and that's really it. And it's not actually that expensive. These are under probably 50-cent transactions. Now credit cards, on the other hand, tend to be closer to 2 to 3%, and the delta between the two reflects actual risk that issuing banks are taking on, because fundamentally what they're doing is they're extending you credit, and there is a risk that you ultimately don't pay back that credit. Credit card transactions also have much higher fraud risk, in addition to kind of what I just cited. So that is what that 2 to 3% actually reflects. And intuitively, stablecoins are instant settlement. They're a debit-like transaction. So they don't have that same credit risk. So if you actually layered in, like, what would that cost with stablecoins, you would end up being around sort of the same cost as like traditional credit card payments. And then in addition to all this, you have sort of the rise of real-time payment networks. So these are often referred as RTP rails. And this has really been popular in like Brazil. You have PIX, India, and you have UPI and these other regions. It hasn't fully taken off in the US yet. There's a lot of structural reasons why. But these are free transactions, and the reason is because these settle directly with the central bank. So
with
it's
the
settling
government.
at sort of the most fundamental layer. Exactly. And my view on this has always been that I think domestic payments get eaten by RTP rails, and I don't think stablecoins really have much of a there's no consumer surplus really gained by stablecoins when you have very efficient RTP rails. And I've kind of been very vocal about this on Twitter, but I actually think I think instead the focus should be on global cross-border payments, because that's where that cost structure is less a function of risk and all these other things. It's more of a function of just antiquated kind of infrastructure. And I think that's kind of the real opportunity. That's where the greatest sort of consumer surplus is ultimately gained, is in the context of global payments. And I also think, and this is probably the most important piece, there's a structural incentive for countries domestically to keep money held principally in their own currency.
Yeah.
So if you're like, China, you want people holding, money in the Chinese currency. If you're India, you want people holding it in the Indian currency, and same thing in the US, right? And for that reason, there's no sort of top-down incentive for governments to build very interoperable global rails. And I think as a result, for the foreseeable future, you're going to have very inefficient sort of global payments. And that's where I think that is the opportunity. That's ultimately the wedge for stablecoins. So I don't know. I would like to see more sort of thoughtful discourse on crypto Twitter with respect to kind of payments, but I just think that's where the focus should be. And I think that's where, crypto and stablecoins specifically have the opportunity to actually eat kind of global payments.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Brazil in the last 2 years, just basically in the Northern Hemisphere winter, going down there, and it's summer down there, and surfing and just hanging out. And Pix is everywhere. I mean, it is the thing that they use for everything. And of course, I didn't get a CPF, which is like their government identification, and so I didn't have Pix, and it definitely made life outside of the outside of stores and restaurants and bars. But you go to like a random beach in Brazil and you got somebody selling like cocoa nuts, like agua de coco is what they call it. And it's just like, they're like, oh, we only take cash or Pix. And you're like, bro, can I just like tap? And you're like, no, there's no tap. You know what I'm saying? So,
right.
So I experienced that firsthand, and I also agree that the Brazilian government and the Brazilian central bank wants visibility into that control. And again, they have that incentive to keep that within their own currency. Now, when it goes to cross-border, then that's where you get Tether's massive use case in Brazil has been in cross-border payments. That's when you get Syria, Turkey. That's when you get all of these countries kind of coming together. I do think that there is a world that I can go to the coffee shop and pay with USDC though. But I just think that there needs to be a level of kind of like integration into the traditional POS systems of basically every like toast, like the actual hardware toast and some of these other things to be able to actually make that happen. But yeah, I think it's a bit of this discourse that is like, oh, we're gonna save the world with stablecoins, but it's like, well, guys, like there's quite a bit to actually solve here still.
100%. One thing I would add too on that is I do think if there is a world where domestic payments get eaten by stablecoins, I think the only path, in my view at least, is if you get an existing fintech, and I think Stripe's the best example, and I actually think this probably is their longer term strategy, where I think their vision is like, hey, we can sort of disintermediate core networks and banks using crypto rails, right? And fundamentally, these are sort of open asset ledgers, and they provide very credible sort of neutral infrastructure. And I think like what that allows you to do is basically, disintermediate Visa and MasterCard, and even banks themselves, right? Because what you're doing is you're holding treasuries and you're actually capturing that yield yourself. Traditionally, that would have been captured by banks. So I think there's a world where, Stripe ends up building out their own global payment network using crypto rails. And to your point, Andy, where, ultimately this has to get integrated into sort of the existing flows and how we actually interface with payments. I think given Stripe already owns sort of the merchant relationship, they can actually integrate that directly with merchants, and they have an incentive to. So I do think, not to be, I'm very skeptical, obviously, of stablecoins in the domestic context, but I do think there is a world where, someone like Stripe or even PayPal ends up sort of pushing this.
Yeah, I mean, it would make a ton of sense if they launched their own as well. That would be like the full end-to-end for them. Do you think that's why they bought Privy, like part of this kind of broader payments play to either stablecoins or just kind of get closer to, like, I guess, why do you think they brought, like, why did they buy Privy? Like why is that so important for Stripe?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's probably just to make it even more seamless for merchants to integrate sort of stablecoins, right? And I think if you're a merchant, right, like you kind of need two things. One is you need orchestration and sort of the actual rails themselves. And that was, I think, intuitively why they ended up acquiring Bridge. So they got that piece, and then it's like, okay, what's the other piece that we need to make this seamless? Okay, you also need wallets. You need like where the user's actually going to hold these stablecoins. And I think embedded wallets are a very elegant solution as well. So I think that's probably the logic. And it's like, okay, you can own the wallet, and then you can own the orchestration, and then the rails themselves are very incredibly neutral, just given these are blockchains. Well, now you kind of have a network, right? And I think sort of they're already well on their way to kind of building this out.
Last thing I have for you, Robbie, I've been asking all of my fund friends, VC friends, traders, bullish or bearish on Pump Fun at 4 bill. What's the call? What's your kind of thought process towards how to value this thing?
Yeah, again, not
financial advice,
and it does not reflect sort of Dragonfly. But no, I think, and this is another thesis I've kind of just been working on and sort of fleshing out. But I actually think if you think about like so I kind of talked about like who owns the end user, and I think it is front ends, but I do think users are ultimately governed by tokens. And I think if you ask yourself the question, like, why do you transact on Solana versus, Ethereum? Yeah. It's because Solana is tokens that you want to trade that Ethereum does not, right? And I think it is simple as that. And as soon as you want to go trade, Aave or, MakerDAO, that's when you're going to use Ethereum. But unless you just want to trade Solana tokens, you use kind of Solana. So I think users are ultimately governed by tokens, and I would say nothing else. And I think that's consistent with the fact that sort of the principal use case for crypto today is trading and speculation. And I think with respect to Pump ultimately owns the issuance of the tokens themselves. So they actually own the tokens, right? They're a two-sided marketplace where you have people spinning up tokens and then you have people trading tokens. And I actually think that is one of the most, if not the most defensible positions in all of crypto, because there's a very strong two-sided network effect there. So I think if you're bullish on meme coins, and that's a whole different question, but I do think if you're bullish on meme coins are going to continue to sort of expand, and you're going to see more and more people wanting to trade these things, and you think this is a long-term sustainable structural trend, I think Pump is the most obvious and sort of cleanest way of expressing that thesis. So if that's kind of your view of the world, I think Pump is quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I heard like maybe a year ago as well. At least part of that. Like I was speaking to Chris Berniski from Placeholder, and we were in Hawaii, and I was like, man, so Pump, like, is this investable from a VC perspective? And like the question is, well, obviously it is, because freaking 6-man ventures is going to be up like 10,000x. But the question is like, how sustainable is this like part of the market, and for how long will speculation run? And like, I mean, I think like the logical answer in what we've seen, this is my third cycle now. It happens every cycle, is that in any sort of bearish market, like any sort of meme activity and that kind of stuff just dwindles really, really, really quickly. DeFi yields compress. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. I think a lot of people are going to fade it. It's a big ask at 4 bill, raise 1 bill, but that's kind of the state of the affairs. I just think it's funny that Pump gets labeled as being super extractive, whereas everyone's kind of like all hands on deck for Hyperliquid, when it's two sides of the same token. One is perps, one is memes, and like it's just this. It's like the picks and shovels for providing people to have fun or to speculate or to gamble. So
totally, I agree. Yeah.
Robbie, I appreciate your time, man. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining, and love your work.
Thanks, Andy. Take care.
Be easy, buddy.
Bye.
All right, we got one last one today. Zagabond from Azuki. Again, really enjoy speaking to people who are thinking about longer term thoughts in the space, especially from the investment perspective. I just can't stress enough how much I am looking to make sure that the deals that we ought to do or want to do have this like focus on exactly where they're going to get their users from. Like I think a lot of teams were sending decks and pitching for different L1s and different types of chains, back before it really mattered. And again, I think Hyperliquid pushed the envelope on this more than ever, where it's like, okay, you need to know exactly who's using your product and how they're going to get there, and kind of exactly what the ideal like loop of discovery into like top of funnel distribution. So in this case, owning the wallet, from what Robbie was speaking about, all the way down to like the core bottom layer, which is what Jonah was speaking about, which is like owning the chain. So for Unichain, right? So I mean, you can just see the verticalization of all these different products and companies. I mean, you got Coinbase Base, Coinbase Wallet, the stock, the exchange. Now perps are live. Uniswap Wallet. They're trying to do Uniswap Social. Now there's Unichain. There's obviously the DEX across every other chain, and like the list just kind of keeps going. So that is going to be the continued trend, I think, guys. We have Zagabond joining up in a bit. I'm gonna jump back to the timeline and have a look at what's going on for you guys here. I see we got a clip from my take on the Polyhedra dump. That thing was crazy. Lot going on there. All right, let's see. Nerolf tweets, happened to me today. Go in the jungle. Ask how to pay for the coffee. Answer, USDT or cash. Wow, that's pretty wild. Let's see. Austin Federa, efficient market hypothesis. The market will supply anything people will pay for. Emod, AGI will have a perfect 100 sleep score and never needs to meditate. How are you going to compete with that, Anon? Jesus, that is crazy. Rookie XBT, Fartcoin doing 40 mil in spot volume over at Coinbase on a random Monday, with BTC looking ready, like it's ready to melt up. Solana ETF approval likely around the corner, and pump fund TGE. Everything is lining up perfectly for the PVE coin of the cycle. Okay, Rookie. Peter from 1KX. Many token holders are about to straight up be Bonnie Blued. Jesus, bro. Fuck. With the incoming wave of crypto VCs that will push for equity value accrual over live tokens. I'd say, can we have an example? That kind of comes back to what Pranav was saying with regards to, if you didn't watch that pod, there was one that we did on the Rollup last week, and it was with Pranav, and we spoke about how these kind of on-chain IPOs are going to happen, and I think that is like a big trend, and that's what I think Peter's referring to. Okay, wow. JP Morgan has filed a trademark for what appears to be called a stablecoin, JPMD. Goods and services, virtual and digital currency, digital tokens and payment tokens, DApps, blockchain-enabled currency. Wow. JP Morgan has filed a trademark for what appears to be a stablecoin called JPMD. Got to comment on this one. This is really bullish. All right, I think we should just be 1 minute until we get Zagabond up, and we should be ready to go. Wow, it's funny to speak to Robbie from Dragonfly right as Rob from their team puts out stablecoins and the collapse of the legacy payment model. Man, everyone is just so bullish. All right, last couple tweets here. Let's see what else is going on. War means buy more Bitcoin. Iran is tied to China, Russia, Pakistan, North Korea with their implied alliances. The U.S. seems to hint towards getting involved if Iran does not comply with the current U.S. proposal, which drags China to the table. As Iran delivers roughly 16% of Chinese crude imports overseas, and China buys roughly 90% of Iran's production. Jesus. War means printer. I agree. I think so. All right, guys, we should be up in just a sec here. Just waiting on Zagabon, and then we're going to wrap for the day. Checking out the timeline once again. Mitosis looks like it's going to launch their token soon. That's interesting. Michael Saylor's posting AI videos. That's interesting. Laudio. Remember Laudio, the big InfoFi experiment that had 90% pre-TG mindshare? It launched 15 days ago, now at 1.5 million market cap, 2.6K in weekly fees. Yikes. That's not great. That is not great. All right, we will be just right back up, guys. Give us 1 second. So JP Morgan is launching a stable coin This is just in as of 52 minutes ago. JPMD. So basically what we have here is a trademark filing for JPMD. You've got their Ohio location, and basically what they're trying to achieve with this,
cool, thank you.
As I was saying earlier, is trading, exchange, transfer, and payment services for digital assets. So the banks are coming into stablecoins in the biggest way we've ever seen. This is something that is completely expected, but like wow, and it is happening so fast. JP Morgan was very anti-crypto, very anti everything. I mean, Jamie Dimon would get on TV and call it a fraud and a scam. I'm telling you, I was at StableCon like 2 weeks ago or so, like here in the city, and man, almost every private bank or financial services company that I spoke to was trying to launch a stablecoin. It was insane. Like the smallest of the companies were trying to launch stablecoins. So, all right, I think we got Zagabon ready. He's in the back now. We're going to bring him up. It'll be our last segment of the day. Co-founder of Azuki. Welcome to the show, man. Welcome up. So Zagabon's up. We're going to get his audio right. And let me just give you guys a backstory. So I joined, I bought my first Pudgy Penguins in like late or like mid to early 2022. I had bought like, I don't know, like a collection of like 10 or 15 of them. I don't know why. I just, you know, I had done pretty well in the 21 cycle and wanted to participate. So did that. And through that process came to actually end up doing the seed round in Pudgy Penguins in the Igloo company, which was insane. The day after FTX collapsed, literally I had basically gotten the okay from Luca and the team, went forward with it, which was down the depths of the bear. You know, I didn't really have much capital. The team wasn't Pudgy Penguins was not anything close to what it is today. But I remember at that point, the only team that I was going to look at outside of Punks was going to be Azuki. And so now Zagabon has kind of come full circle. He's here today with us to talk our industry's culture, to talk anime chain. And
thank you.
It has been just Pudgy Penguins and Azuki who have taken NFTs and gone to the next logical step, which is trying to cross the chasm in terms of like pop culture and in terms of reaching new audiences with different types of basically of initiatives outside of the space. So Zagabon, welcome to the show, man. I was just giving a little preamble as to how I got involved into NFTs. I was pretty deep in DeFi first, but then, you know, kind of came along here. So welcome on, man. It's good to have you. Welcome on, Zagabon. It's good to have you on. And I was just giving a little preamble as to how I got started into NFTs. And I was talking about all the exciting things that I had originally gotten into with Pudgy Penguins, then did the seed round, and then now have came to watch both of you, Azuki and Pudgy Penguins, be the only NFTs that have actually gone out and built real communities and real culture and become a brand of its own, representing crypto in a much less financialized version than a lot of the kind of perception is, you know, now. So thanks for joining, man. How are you today?
I'm great, man. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. I think we were hanging out in Asia last year as you guys were rolling out Anime Chain.
Anime Chain, anime.com. Yeah, that was a fun circuit.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, look, so my thought process with the entire Azuki brand is like, okay, you start with the NFTs, you get these really core collecting or this core kind of community who's strongly committed. And then you go and you build this massive top of funnel outside of it with a very specific target segment, in this case being anime, which is like one of the largest industries in the entire world. And then you're able to do so much more with that. So I'm thinking kind of like, as we're looking at anime.com and anime chain, how are you going about this transition even further now, right? So you've got anime chain, you've got anime.com. You know, just kind of like put the pieces in my head as to how you went from Azuki's to where you are now and kind of where you see yourself going. I think that will set a good foundation for those who are watching now.
Yeah, we started Azuki about 4 years ago now, and the vision is to create a brand that encapsulates Web3 culture because there wasn't really anything like that around the time. People weren't really thinking about NFT collections as a brand. It was just, hey, here's a bunch of JPEGs. We have a cool community, and let's see where we go from there. But we said we want to create a brand that really can combine digital and physical because that's a new wave of storytelling that wasn't possible before. So for us, it wasn't just the anime art; it was doing drops that really had tie-ins between physical and digital. We did that with the physical back token. And then we auctioned off these skateboards, and they all broke the record for the most expensive skateboard ever sold. So that was like about 2.5 years ago. Um, and we did in real life events where we did live airdrops, and that was a new thing at the time. No one had done a live airdrop for people at an event. So these are things that I would say are core to what Azuki is all about. And as we grew the project and grew the community and started growing the IP beyond just Web3, what I realized was the anime industry could really use Web3 as a technology to help democratize it. Because right now, the production process for anime is very centralized and people don't get to participate. Fans want to own a piece of that future of the anime industry, but they're not able to today. And so with Anime Coin and anime.com, the vision is how can we build something that has distribution to anime fans around the world, being anime.com? How can we give back ownership and a piece of that culture that fans and creators in the industry help create? And that's Anime Coin. And so it all started with Azuki as an NFT project, but look, we're after so much more than just building a brand now, right? We really want to build the future of anime together with the fans and the creators, and that's what we're up to today.
All right, so let's go way back then, and let's talk about the NFT cycle of 2021. I'm just curious, like, what was your personal favorite, set of events or moment from that cycle that was just, it was magical back then. It was just mints, and it was just whitelists. It was just an entire ecosystem. Like, what were some of your top, memories and just overall vibes from that?
That era, you could literally mint anything and it would go up 10x. I was minting crypto junks, right? They were like, yeah, you can imagine what it was. And my thesis was you can't be junkless in the metaverse, right? So I got to mint these things. It was like 0.08 ETH or something. And then they went up after. But the top moment for me was probably, what I think is really cool about NFTs is it helped bring back a group of friends that I hadn't talked to in a long time. And I'm sure like for a lot of other people, crypto has done the same. And so for me, it was, I've been trying to get a couple of my buddies into crypto for a while. Since 2016, 2017, I was telling them, buy ETH, buy Bitcoin. You should learn smart contracts, learn Solidity. And they kept pushing it off. But then 2021, with NBA Top Shot, we're all NBA fans. Right?
Oh,
and
yeah,
I said,
of course.
guys, you can collect like a Luka Doncic game winner in the playoffs. That's sick, right? These are officially licensed, and the pack opening experience was lit. And so my favorite moment was I got a couple buddies together, and we were just pooling together our money to rip Top Shot moments. And we got a Steph Curry like diamond, platinum, like whatever rarity moment, and we were just going crazy on like Discord because we had pulls, and it was worth like 5K. And that moment was so I think impactful in terms of how we thought about experiences with NFTs. And funny enough, those two guys are actually my co-founders now. That's
No way,
2PM, who's
dude.
our CTO, who you talked to before, and then Location, who's my other co-founder. And so, these experiences really help bring people together. And so I'll say that's probably my top moment.
Yeah, man. Dude, and that's the thing about the culture, right? Is that every time I've been to a party for an NFT, it's always been a way different vibe than typical like crypto events. And the people that have like coalesced around them are just far different. And I think that speaks to like a different type of person that like now Azuki and anime.com are trying to onboard, right? It's not necessarily like the same type of category, but I think that it does a lot to expand the kind of addressable market for crypto and for our space, right? Like, really, you don't really need, you can just be somebody looking for community. And I think that's a big thing that people discount the value of NFTs for, like, oh, why would I pay for this JPEG? But I think that the community aspect is almost priceless.
Definitely. And I think the core community in terms of like the super fans, right? The ones that want to build alongside the team and the project, I think 10,000 is a great supply. And you really only need about 1,000 diehard holders to really help push a brand forward. Like you saw this with Bored Apes, you saw it with Pudgies, you saw it with Azuki, and that part doesn't need to scale, right? So I love the exclusivity about a limited supply NFT collection. What does need to scale though is the IP. That IP needs to be loved by millions of people across the world, and the core holder base can still be that super small community that's been building with the team through it all. So I think now projects are starting to find that if you only build for the 50 to 100,000 people that are in this space, that's tough. Even though I think crypto is really good for capital formation, and so you're able to create quote unquote valuable projects that hit a really high peak in a short amount of time. But for this to be sustainable and for this entire space to grow, I think NFTs has to provide a lot more utility. It needs to reach a lot more people. They don't all have to be high floor price NFTs. You're seeing this now on Telegram, right? And so we're very much focused on expanding the IP and growing the community outside of Ethereum, because there's applications and platforms now like Telegram that understand why NFTs are valuable. And when projects drop sticker packs on Telegram, there's utility, right? People use it to express themselves. And these stickers can be really high supply. The purpose of it isn't to create an exclusive community, which is what the core NFT collection was. So I think long term, like NFTs can be used like across the board. And there's so many different use cases. And I think we're only scratching the surface.
Yeah, man. I mean, again, when I look at the landscape right now, it's very clear. Azuki and Pudgy Penguins are the culture of the space, pushing outside and going to get new people, bringing them on, and kind of bring them into this perception of crypto that is just far different than the financialized, kind of typical speculative use cases, but also has that embedded in some capacity. You also recently wrote that you wanted to kind of tokenize fandom, and that this is something that you find powerful. When you're looking at Luca and Pudgy Penguins, obviously, I'm a big fan. What has inspired you about what they've done, or what have you kind of learned from anything that you've seen from that community?
They've done a lot of things well, and I always give my shout outs to Luca. I text him whenever he drops something dope, and hopefully we kind of inspire each other, right, to keep pushing the space forward. I think one thing they've done really well is understand the power of each and individual holder. It's really amplified in this space, and when you have the collective belief of even 1,000 strong holders, that could create $1 billion FDV, because a token it's not the same as an equity, right? A token is like a unit of belief. There's social value in there. There's economic value in there. There's also cultural value in there. And that's what tokenized fandom means to me, is that it's a new way of thinking about value. And it couldn't exist before with traditional instruments. But now with tokens, you're able to have that. And if you give it to the right people and you empower the right community, amazing things can happen. And so I think what Pudgies have done really well is in doing that with the Pudgy collection and Pengu. I think for us, it's with the Azuki collection and now with Anime Coin to help empower a global community of creatives that are going to shape the future of the anime industry. So I think it takes a lot of foresight, but also just you have to show up day in and day out to make sure your community stays on track. And that's something that I think there's only a few projects that have made it this far. A lot of them, when things get tough, when prices go down, founders will just be like, hey, you know what? I'm pivoting to Web 2 because that's safe, right? Or, you know what? Like, I can't take this anymore. Like, I'm just going to quit. We've seen that time and time again. And if you don't have a vision for what this could become, like this space will eat you up alive. Like you will not be able to make it. And so when I look around, I feel really good knowing that we have leaders like, Luca that are helping push the space forward. And so I think they're doing some great things.
Yeah, man. I mean, in that tweet as well, you wrote quite a long post about your career, right? Being in the space for 8 years, running the OX Slack. I remember ZRX in 2017, DeFi, OpenFi, and just kind of like the rise and the fall of that last cycle. I mean, it hit all of us hard, just from the amount of growth in the space to the amount of contraction that happened quick. One thing that you guys clearly made a strong bet on was building Anime Chain, right? Using Arbitrum, Privy, Conduit, Celestia, some of these technical partners to make this idea come to life. I'm curious, like why you wanted to create Anime Chain, and then why you chose some of these technical partners to build the stack that you guys did.
So my thinking was, if we're putting in the right resources and putting in the effort to create anime.com, which we want to be the home for anime fandom, and we want this to be a platform in which anime fans can express themselves, collect things from their favorite IPs, and really have a better social experience than they do today, then that culture and that user base, we want that to funnel that to the rest of the ecosystem in a way where like the value can create like network effects throughout this ecosystem.
Yeah, for
so how
you
do we do
guys,
that?
not for just the general base layer, right? Or right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so like if we own the distribution, then we should own the value that we're creating as an ecosystem.
Right.
And so what's the best way to do that? And I think, Arbitrum was a great partner to us, because for me, like the tech is one thing. And they have like the Orbit chain solution, and it makes it easy to spin up your own L3. For me, it's really about like the ethos of the people that I'm working with. And when I met AJ and Steven, who works on Off-Chain Labs, they really understand the ethos of crypto and what Ethereum is all about. And I think they reached stage 1 decentralization on Arbitrum before anyone else. And so I feel like with those aligned values, I could commit to being a partner with them long term. Right. And so we decided to build with Arbitrum, and then, with other tools like Privy and, Conduit. It just makes it easy for us to actually just own that stack, where we can just focus on acquiring users, building experiences for anime fans that helps onboard people into the space. And we weren't able to do this, 2-3 years ago. So this is only possible with all of these, infra partners now, which is great. So in terms of timeline, we want to have anime.com have a core product loop and start getting distribution, getting real users. And we have more features coming out, right, to tackle that. And then once users are here, we want to then invite other builders to build in the Anime Chain ecosystem. And the core value prop is that, hey, we have millions of users that are anime fans. Build custom apps for them, and we will give you users. And that's when Anime Coin will then start being a currency for the future of the anime industry. And so that's the kind of the rollout. And so we're in no rush to say, hey, we want to open up an ecosystem. You can build any app you want. We want to give you grants and all that stuff. I think that'll come with time. And like I said, the biggest value prop are users at the end of the day. Teams always tell me like they want users to actually use their products. And it's not just about, getting a check to build something short term.
Yeah, man. And I think also you can go to future anime companies, telecom companies, TV providers, local communities. And if you have this strong Zoomer, if you will, young person base of users that are real, that's something that I think a lot of these older companies would pay for as well, just from like an advertising perspective, because it's hard to get like, so many people are using like the typical social platforms, but the younger generation, they have like a different way of using online, just all networks, crypto, et cetera. And so I think there is a huge value proposition for, some of the older, more traditional, whether it's public media or magazines and stuff like that, to bring them on chain to your ecosystem, right? And that becomes valuable to those companies that don't have that level of distribution directly to this new set of users, really.
100%. And so I think it's corporations that are looking to tap into the younger audience. And for anime, it's the IP holders as well in Japan that are looking to tap into this younger audience. And there's really no good way for them to do that today, because when they partner with, if you think about like the biggest anime companies here in the West, it's like Crunchyroll, right? Netflix. They're not focused on community. They're not focused on experiences. They're just focused on streaming, right? Watch anime and then you're done. But then when we talk to anime fans, and we've done plenty of user studies, and we ask them where the pain points are, a big one for them is we just want to experience anime after we watch it. Like, we want to go to events. We want to discuss things with other fans. We want to collect more things. We want to buy officially licensed merch. Why is that so hard, right? And so I feel like the fandom is really underserved. And in about a couple of weeks from now, we have an Azuki event during Anime Expo, which is the largest conference in LA. 500,000 people around the world are coming to LA for Anime Expo, because that's how strong the fandom is. We have our own side event, and we're sponsoring Anime Expo. And there's anime companies that want to work with us through this event, because they see that like this is where the anime industry is headed. And they're sponsoring, or they're filling up our claw machines and gachapons with some of their products, because they want to start establishing this relationship. So I think we already see that momentum start to come our direction. And so as a space, as a crypto space, we should feel really good knowing that there's teams like Azuki, Doodles, Pudgy Penguins that are thinking about this from a consumer lens and talking with the right people in the industry and helping move everything in our direction.
Man, I hope you go out there and absolutely crush that and have a great time and onboard a ton of new people. I think that's exactly where this space is in need, right? We've got a lot of like this institutional onboarding happening, stablecoins. There's a lot of this kind of large capital, but really, we're not really going to get to where we need to be until that more consumer, retail, friend, family kind of branding is real and becomes a real thing. And that just takes time. And, you've seen that, and you'll continue to see that in your endeavors. So wishing you the best, bro. Appreciate your time, and looking forward to seeing what comes out of Anime Expo and everything else, dude.
All right, man. Thanks, Andy. Thanks for having me.
All right, BG.
See you guys.
Peace, brother. All right, guys. Fantastic stream. I really, really am impressed by Pudgy Penguins and Azuki as being able to go out there and actually bring on new people in a non-financial, non-speculative way, purely brand, purely IP dominated. So been a bit of a marathon today. We'll be back to you guys tomorrow. I think a lot has happened probably behind the scenes off the stream as well. Got to catch up there. But I think JP Morgan being the biggest thing that you guys saw in between those last two guests. So as always, guys, thank you for watching the Rollup TV. We'll see you tomorrow, and peace.